Hi, my name is Taylor Buster, and for the integrated mini teaching lesson, I picked the painting Sandia by Carmen Lomas Garza, and it was painted in 1986, and I chose fourth grade standards for all my lessons. So basically, I would just have this on the smartboard and just have students observe what they see in the painting. I would just ask them to write down what they see, what kind of colors are used, and kind of what they like about the painting, just to kind of get their juices flowing. And I would explain that sandia means watermelon in Spanish, just so students will be able to infer by looking at the painting, probably why Carmen named that poem Sandia. And then I will give them a little background on Carmen. I will say she grew up in Kingsville, Texas, during the 1980s, and I will explain to her that explain to the class that a lot of the inspiration for her paintings was the Chicano movement, which was a civil rights movement to empower Mexican Americans, is the inspiration behind her paintings. And I will explain also that she faced a lot of racism during that time, so she wanted to paint positive messages about the Mexican American community and just her family in general. And so basically, to incorporate the social studies aspect, also, I chose the standards. I will have students locate important physical and man-made features in the United States. And also in the 1980s, there was also a lot of Mexican immigrants coming from Mexico and areas surrounding the Gulf of Mexico. So I'll have students label the Gulf of Mexico on a map, and then I will also have students label where Carmen grew up on a map. And then for to help them practice locating states and their capitals, there were certain states. It was mostly on the West Coast that the Chicano movement happened. So I have them label cities and states such as El Paso, Las Vegas, Denver, Dallas, Fresno, Los Angeles, and Oakland. And I will have them also label the corresponding state to those. And then also to incorporate a little bit more of the art component, I will have students also kind of critique the painting as well. Also have them ask, do they like it? What would they change about it? And also, can you tell a story from looking at her painting? And so, moving on to the next lesson I would do, the next mini lesson is incorporating language arts and aesthetics. So I will introduce the painting and I will ask 3 aesthetic questions about it. And again, I will have it on the smartboard. I will ask them what they see in the picture. Basically, how does it make you feel? And what's one thing you don't like about the painting? And for the standard I chose, it is explain major differences in poems, drama, prose, and then refer to structural elements of poems and drama, character setting, descriptions, dialogue, stage directions when writing or speaking about a text. So how this plays into art is a lot of Carmen's art was about family. And in the painting, you can see children, maybe a possible mother and father, and some extended family. So I thought that I would have children identify the parts of a poem, and then write maybe a poem about each member of their family and their personality. And then also have them identify each part of a drama and also be able to create their own drama that from topics that I've chosen. And I also said that I would mention to students that kind of the setting looks like a typical American sitcom of, a mother, a father, children, an extended family. So I would also kind of incorporate that into the art lesson. And so for their for the objectives, I would say identify each part of a poem and then identify each part of a drama. And so for the first assessment, I will have students write a poem and use the elements of a poem we talked about in class. Again, a poem about their family and what they're like. And for the second assessment, I will have students create their own drama and perform it in front of the class in groups of like 3 or 4. And so basically, I would have students incorporate that family aspect of Carmen's art into what we're learning. So moving on to mini lesson number 3, which is math and art criticism. So again, I will always have the painting on the smartboard to make sure all the students are able to see. And so the 4 questions that I will ask students is what they see in the artwork, if they see any geometric shapes such as triangles, squares, or rectangles. And then I'll say, can you think of a story to go with this picture? Or do you think the artist did a good job on this painting? And so the math standard I will incorporate is to classify 2-dimensional figures based on the presence or absence of parallel or perpendicular lines or the presence or absence of angles of a specific size, and recognize triangles as a category and identify right triangles. So for the objectives, students are going to identify shapes in the painting that have or lack parallel or perpendicular lines, and identify the presence or absence of angles in geometric shapes. Then also they're going to identify right triangles in the painting as well. So I'll first start off by introducing what a perpendicular line is, what a parallel line is, and basically draw a shape on the board and say, hey, this would be a perpendicular line found in the shape, or this would be a parallel line found in the shape. So for the next part of the standard, which is the presence or absence of angles of a specific size, I will tell students, introduce the types of angles, that there are obtuse, acute, and right, and I will draw shapes and demonstrate what an obtuse angle would look like, what a right angle, and what an acute angle would look like, just so students know what to look for in the painting. And so basically, I will have students kind of look at the painting, and then I will call on people to come to the board and show me where they can find really any angles in any of the shapes, or any parallel or perpendicular lines, or even any right triangles. I'll definitely have to explain a right triangle is a triangle that forms a 90-degree angle. I'll again have to demonstrate what that is just to make sure that students understand. And for the assessment, I will have a picture already created for them, and it's kind of like find the missing parts, but except this time they're finding the parallel and perpendicular lines in the picture that I've already drawn for them. So the second assessment is I will have them create their own picture using shapes, and I will have them make sure they use acute, obtuse, and acute angles in their picture. So they're allowed to draw whatever they want as long as they are able to point out the angles in each shape. Alright, so moving on to the final lesson. So for my mini science lesson and art project, basically again I'm going to introduce the painting, and then I will explain the scientific connection. So for my science standard, I said students will understand important features of the process of scientific inquiry. And then for the visual art standard, students are going to create artwork based on personal experience and selected themes. So for my science objective, students are going to understand how to make predictions based on observations. And for visual arts objective, I'm going to have them create a picture of a significant event that has impacted their life. And the event could be positive or negative, and examples of events could be winning a sports game, having to move, a death, or a birth in the family. And I'm going to have them do this because the author Carmen paints pictures based on what she's lived. She makes pictures based on her family, and her life as a Mexican American woman. So that's why I'm having students make pictures based on their experiences. And so I'm gonna, for the science lesson, I will introduce what scientific inquiry is. I will explain to them that it's what goes on in the world based on what scientists see are occurring. And how I'm going to tie this back into art is scientists inquire based on what they observe and what they test. And Carmen paints based on what she's lived and her experiences that she's gone through. And so, as an example of a event that could be a positive life experience, could be the picture I drew of myself winning a cheerleading competition. So that could definitely be a good example of a significant event that has impacted me in a positive way. So for the first science assessment, I will say students will make a prediction about what is going on in the painting based on what they observe. So I will have students look at the painting and I will have them predict maybe who's who, who's doing what, why are they eating sandia, which is watermelon in Spanish, what time of day it is, maybe based on what they see in the picture, which family members are in the picture, maybe do they all even live there. To kind of have students kind of get their imagination going as well as their scientific brains. So for the second assessment, I will have, which is a visual arts assessment, students are going to create a picture based on a personal event that has changed their lives. Again, I will emphasize the event could be positive or negative, something that has either maybe hurt them, helped them, made them happy, sad, basically bringing forth the emotion of art and putting that emotion into their artwork and just emphasizing that. And that is all for all my lessons, and thank you for listening, and everyone have a good evening. Thank you.